much sense to me. Now, you said before that they're producing honey and beeswax.
Yep.
So beeswax is used in an awful lot of things like lip balm, different cosmetics, things like that. I mean, candles.
Yep.
For people that want more natural products, that's what they're going after. Is that correct? What other uses are there for the beeswax?
So I haven't dove into that part. I reuse all of my beeswax. So whether it's dirty comb, I mean, they don't use the dirty comb for lip balm and candles because it's dark and dirty.
Okay.
There's been eggs laid in it, and they've gone through the life cycle, and cocoons have hatched. A lot of people use the honey or the cappings that they scrape off when they harvest. They use that for the lip balm and candles. I reuse all of mine. So I put it in a small crock pot, I melt it down into a brick, and I store the brick, or I melt it down and I use a paintbrush. And I don't know if there's, yeah. So inside each hive are 10 of these. And this is called a foundation. So this is where they build their own comb.
Okay.
I'll take the wax that I melt down and use a paintbrush to paint over this and get them started on building wax to build this out deep enough to where they can lay eggs in it. So this only has one coating of wax on it.
Okay.
So I can take a paintbrush and paint over this with the wax that I take out, and it gives them a head start on wax building.
And then when they build that up and they've got the honey stored in the individual little pockets, you take those out and cap it, scrape off a layer, and put it in an extractor. Is that correct?
Yep. So these are called deep honey or deep deep brood frames. So these frames are typically only used for the queen laying eggs, and they store honey on these for what they will eat this winter. The smaller box has some smaller frames. They're 6 5/8, and that's what they put what I consider my honey in. They build it out to the edge of the wood. I take a knife, cut off all the tops. I put it into a honey extractor, and it spins around, and the centrifugal force pulls it all out, and it drains into the bottom and straight into a bucket.
Awesome, awesome. So in each box, I assume that the bees produce more honey than they will need throughout the winter, and that's why you're able to extract it.
Right. So in some cases, so like I have 2 hives across the field. I'm kind of worried about those hives because they don't have a lot of honey stored for themselves for the winter.
Okay.
So on those hives, we'll see that I put a jar of sugar water, and they eat that, and then they turn that into honey for themselves.
Because it's like hummingbird food.
Yep.
And hummingbirds also feed off nectar.
Right. And then, but if you feed honeybees that water mixture, if they put that back into your hive and that's part of your honey, technically beekeepers can't call it honey because it's not the work of going out to the flower and getting it, bringing it back to the hive and transforming it from nectar into honey.
But it is a way to save the...
But it is a way to fatten them up, get them enough stored for themselves, and then when it gets cold out, I take a 4-pound bag of honey, or a 4-pound bag of sugar. I put just a little bit of water in it to stir it up like a Play-Doh consistency, and I lay that flat on a box. I put it right on top of the hive, and they eat from the bottom over the winter if they need it.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
well, that's awesome. I've learned a lot. I appreciate that. And I think the folks out there are going to learn a lot more about that. Now, well, I did have another further question. Honeybees are basically wild.
correct.
I mean, even if you have them in a box like this, they're still wild. What other places out in nature would honeybees normally set up house?
Well, a house is one. So, just last year we went to an abandoned house by Houghton where 2 colonies had moved in, one on the outside wall of a house and one in the upstairs wall of a house. And so it was just a wild colony that decided, hey, we need more room, so they left. So they just set up right underneath the siding, and in the 2x4 and the 16-inch section of wall, they built high. They built comb all the way up and down it. So that's one.
We saw a situation like that in Mount Sterling, what, a couple years ago. An abandoned church there had mass of honeybees on the outside coming and going, and yeah, that's what they had done there too.
Yep, and then they also set up in cavities of hollow trees. There's a lot of places where beekeepers will get called and say, hey, I have some bees in a log that fell, we're cutting down a tree and a bunch of bees came out of it. There's actually one in Charleston right now that I got called on, but it's a huge, massive tree, and they don't want to cut it down. And I can't get to the colony without them cutting it down, so they're going to stay there until the tree either rots far enough to where it needs to come down, that it's unsafe, or the bees get too aggressive that their kids can't play in the yard anymore.
Yeah. So. And people have been harvesting honey since the dawn of time.
Yep.
All over the planet. I mean, it goes back to ancient Mesopotamia and everywhere, really, for as long as we know. Probably cave people were getting honey.
Yeah, so I bought my first hive kit and all my first set of accessories from Day Dance, which is just over in Hamilton, and they actually have in their showroom or in their sales room a big chunk of beeswax that was found as part of a shipwreck from hundreds of years ago.
Oh wow!
And it just shows that bees have been around for a while, and it's hard to get rid of wax.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is Tony, as you guys know. This is also Tony from Sugar Creek Honey Farm, and thank you so much for sharing your information.
Thanks for
with
coming
us
out.
today.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and love to see your business get booming here, so that folks can purchase from you, or you get out to farmers markets or things like that. So
right now it's just me and my 82-year-old grandpa, so we can't move too fast.
Yeah. All right. Thanks much, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.